Every time someone asks you for a favor you don't want to do, you basically turn into a defense attorney. You've got your opening statement ready, three pieces of evidence lined up, and a closing argument that somehow loops back to your childhood. And at the end of all that, the other person just negotiates harder. So here's what's actually happening when you over-explain. You're not being polite, you're signaling that your time is up for grabs. And once people figure that out, your schedule stops being yours. Imagine you run a business, and every time a customer walks in, you immediately start discounting everything before they even ask. Nobody requested a sale. Nobody even looked at the price tag yet. But there you are, already slashing numbers, already explaining why things cost what they cost, already working to justify the whole operation before a single question gets asked. That's what you're doing every time you preload a no with 5 reasons nobody asked for. Most guys treat their time like it's on sale. Someone asks for a Saturday, and before the word no even forms, you're already mid-sentence about your workload, your back, your cousin's thing, your dog's vet appointment, the errand you've been putting off for 3 weeks. You're not declining. You're auditioning. You're running through your whole calendar out loud, hoping that somewhere in that pile of reasons, the other person will find one good enough to let you off the hook. And the wild part is, you think that approach softens the no. It doesn't. What all those reasons actually do is hand the other person a checklist, a list of specific objections they can now work through one by one. Oh, your dog has a vet appointment? What about Sunday? Now you're stuck because Sunday doesn't have a reason yet, so you've got to go find one. And suddenly, you're negotiating a weekend you never agreed to give up, with someone who didn't even need that much of your time to begin with. You opened a negotiation you didn't mean to start, and now you're losing it in real time. Status signaling works the opposite way most people expect. When someone in a high authority position makes a decision without a long explanation, people read that as confidence. When someone over-explains, the brain reads it as submission. Not politeness, not consideration, submission. You're not coming across as thoughtful. You're coming across as someone who needs permission. A CEO doesn't see the whole company explaining why he skipped a meeting. He just didn't go. His time gets assumed to have value, and that assumption builds because he never argued for it out loud. The scarcity principle works the same way here. When something's always available, always on sale, always discounted before you even ask, you stop treating it as worth much. Not because it isn't, but because the price tag says so. Your time works exactly like that. When you're constantly available and constantly justifying why you sometimes aren't, you're pricing your time at clearance rates. You're not doing it on purpose, but you're doing it every single time you add a because after a no. So the first thing to fix isn't the specific words you say when you decline something. It's the mental model you're running underneath all of it. Right now, your brain is treating your time like a service that owes people an explanation when it's unavailable. A store posts its hours on the door and doesn't call every customer personally to explain why it closes at 6. You're not a service that's always open. You're a limited resource, and limited resources don't come with a 40-slide deck justifying their price. Once you stop treating your time like something that needs to be defended, the whole dynamic shifts. You're not asking permission to say no. You're just saying it, and then you're done talking, and that alone changes how people respond to you. They stop pushing because there's nothing to push against. No list of reasons to poke holes in, no open negotiation to walk into, just a closed answer from someone who clearly meant it. The pattern that keeps pulling you back into all that explaining, though, it's got a name, and it's a lot less flattering than just being polite. Picture a grown man in his 30s, solid job, pays his bills, handles real pressure at work every single day, and yet the second someone asks him to come to a Saturday brunch he doesn't want to attend, he turns into a nervous kid standing outside the principal's office. He's sweating. He's scanning his mental calendar for a good enough excuse. He's already rehearsing his explanation before the other person even finishes the sentence. That reaction has a name. It's called the fawn response, And it's a survival mechanism your nervous system picked up a long time ago, probably way before you had a job or a calendar or any reason to explain yourself to a coworker. The logic your brain learned was simple. If you explain yourself enough, people won't get angry. And if people aren't angry, you're safe. So your nervous system got very good at generating reasons, softening tones, and filling silence with words, because at some point, that's what kept the peace. The problem is that brunch isn't a threat. Your coworker asking for a favor isn't dangerous. But your nervous system doesn't check the situation before it runs the old script, so it fires anyway, and suddenly you're apologizing for having a schedule, over-explaining to someone who, honestly, would have been fine with a simple, "I can't make it." Now, it's worth separating this from something that looks similar but isn't the same thing at all. Some people, especially those with ADHD or detail-heavy thinking styles, explain a lot because detail feels like accuracy to them. Their brain doesn't build a complete picture without the full context, so they give you the full context. That's not defensive. That's not fear-driven. That's just how their brain processes and communicates information, and those are two completely different things running under the hood. The fawn response, though, isn't about accuracy. It's about managing someone else's reaction to your answer before they've even had one. Your subconscious is basically screaming, "Please don't be mad at me. I have a valid reason. I'm still a good person." And all that noise comes out as a wall of explanation that nobody asked for. And here's what actually matters. The fawn response is a learned coping pattern, not a fixed part of who you are. You weren't born doing this. You practiced it enough that it feels automatic, and that means you can stop practicing it. Most advice skips straight to, "Just say no and be confident," which sounds great and does basically nothing, because your body is already 3 steps into the apology before your brain catches up. You can't think your way out of a physical response that fast. What you can do is learn to recognize the exact moment it kicks in, and it always feels the same way. A sudden urge to fill silence, add context, or soften something that didn't actually need softening. That feeling is the signal. That's the moment to stop, not to add more words. The fix isn't to turn cold or act like you don't care about people. It's to stop treating that uncomfortable silence as a problem that needs solving with more sentences. The discomfort you feel after a short "no" is just your nervous system running old software on a situation that doesn't require it. You feel like something's broken, like the air needs to be cleared, like one more sentence will make everything okay. It won't. The silence is already doing the job. You just have to let it. Once you can tell the difference between sharing information that's actually useful and scrambling to manage someone else's reaction, you stop over-explaining and start just answering. Short, clear, done. And that shift exposes a very specific trap that catches most people right at that moment, every single time. There's an acronym worth knowing: JADE. It stands for justify, argue, defend, explain. And if you've ever declined something and then spent the next 4 minutes still talking, you were jading. The trap works like this. Someone asks you to do something, you say no, and then the silence hits and it feels wrong, so you justify it. They push back a little, so you argue your point. They look unconvinced, so you defend it harder. And then, just to make absolutely sure they get it, you explain the whole thing again from the top, slightly reworded, as if the first version just needed better packaging. By the end of that loop, you've burned more energy declining the thing than you would have spent just doing it, and the other person has learned something about you. Your no is a starting position, not a final answer. Every sentence you add after the no is an invitation to negotiate. You think you're clarifying, but what you're actually doing is opening the door wider, and pushy people are very good at walking through open doors. Say you can't make it Friday because you need to clean your place. Now they've got something to work with. Just clean it Saturday. Doors open, they walked right in, and now you're defending your cleaning schedule to someone who didn't even need that information in the first place. The psychological power in a boundary comes from its finality. A short, clean statement, "I can't make it Friday," reads as closed. The moment you add "because," you've made it conditional, and conditional things can always be worked around. That single word, "because," turns your answer into an argument waiting to happen. It's an open bracket with no closing bracket, and the other person's brain automatically goes looking for one. So the silence after a short "no" feels unbearable, right? Your brain reads it as conflict, as something broken that needs fixing, so it reaches for words to patch the gap. That's the exact moment to do nothing. Just stop. Let the silence sit there and do its job, because it will. The other person doesn't need more information. They need to register that you answered and you're done answering. The silence communicates that faster than any follow-up sentence ever could. Sitting in that pause is actually the work. Not finding the perfect phrasing, not calibrating your tone, not rehearsing a softer version of the same answer. Just not filling the gap. It feels uncomfortable the first few times, and then it starts to feel like control, because that's what it is. Think about it like compound interest. Every time you hold the line without tacking on a footnote, you're building a reputation as someone whose answer means something. People clock that over time, even if they don't say it out loud. They stop pushing because they've already figured out it doesn't move you. That reputation doesn't get built through one perfect conversation. It builds through a dozen small moments where you said the short version and stopped talking. "No, thank you," followed by "nothing isn't rude." It's not cold. It's just a closed door, and closed doors don't need explaining. The jade trap convinces you that more words equal more clarity. But what they actually equal is more negotiating surface for the other person to grab onto. Less is more precise here, not more vague. Knowing the trap exists is a real start. But knowing it and actually breaking the habit in the moment are two completely different things. And that gap is where most people stay stuck. Because the reason this is hard isn't really about tactics or phrasing or finding the right words. It goes back to something much more basic. What you actually think your time is worth, and whether you've decided that yet. Call it strategic selfishness if that label helps, but really it's just a bandwidth decision. You've got a fixed amount of time, and every yes you hand out to something you didn't want costs you a real yes somewhere that actually matters. Your work, your money, your relationships. So next time you decline something, say the short version and stop talking. Don't soften it. Don't follow up with a text explanation an hour later. Let the silence sit there and do its job. That discomfort you feel is just your brain running an old program. Your time isn't on clearance. Stop pricing it that way.